Davos Seaworth tasted metal and smoke on the wind before he saw the fire. He stood near the prow of Stannis' flagship, fingers curled around the damp rail. The Blackwater Bay ahead was a ragged sheet of darkness, broken by scattered lanterns and the pale shimmer of moonlight. The city walls were a jagged shadow beyond. The red keep a darker tooth atop the black line of hill. Beside him, the red woman stood as if carved from bloodstone, her crimson skirts whispering in the wind, her shadow long and thin on the deck. The ruby at her throat pulsed with its own slow heartbeat. "Do you smell it, Sire?" Melisandre asked softly. "The fear." "I smell tar and salt," Davos said. The tide lapped against the hull. The sound reminded him of the stepstones, and of smaller, humbler ships he had once called his own. "And old piss, if the truth be told. King's Landing reeks." "The city is awound," she said. "Tonight the king will cleanse it." Her king stood higher on the forecastle, armored in dark plate that drank the moonlight. Stannis Baratheon's cloak snapped behind him, a field of black with a burning heart blazoned red and gold. The king's jaw clenched as he stared toward the unseen walls. His eyes narrowed, a man squinting at an account come due. Davos followed his gaze. Nothing yet, only the night. Only the faint shuffle of men on the decks around them, the low mutter of voices, the creak of timbers, the distant splash of oars. Their vast fleet moved forward with the slow inevitability of a tide. Hundreds of ships, war galleys with proud names, Fury, Lady Maria, Scepter, Lord Stefan, advancing on the capital that had once been his brother's. Davos remembered another black shore and a storm that had not been natural. He remembered the red woman on the parapets of Storm's End, her long hair alive in the wind, the night splitting open at her cry. He remembered the thing that had slid from her body, pale and wet and hateful, wearing his king's face. He had urged Stannis to leave her behind tonight. He had spoken until his voice was raw. "Magic won you Storm's End, your grace, but this is war. Men win wars, ships and steel." But Melisandre had watched him with her unreadable eyes, and Stannis, his king, his once smuggler's salvation and damnation both, had only said, "I will use every weapon that is mine, Davos. Would you have me go to battle less than whole?" The king lifted a hand. The signal horns brayed, deep and mournful. Oars splashed in unison as the foremost ships shifted formation, angling toward the river mouth. Davos's heart gave a reluctant leap. Too late to argue now. Too late for doubts. The king descended from the forecastle, boots ringing on the planks. He came to stand by Davos and the Red Priestess, his hard face turned toward the looming dark of the city. "The boy is there," Stannis said. He did not speak Joffrey's name. The Whore Queen, the imp, all of them. His mouth twisted, not quite a smile. "For 15 years I've watched them feast on what was mine. Tonight they choke on it. Light will devour their shadows," Melisandre said. "You are the chosen of the Lord of Light, your grace. The night is your enemy. Look," she pointed. For a moment Davos saw nothing. Then he realized that the darkness ahead was not uniform. There was a thread of deeper blackness at the river mouth, a gap where the faint sheen of starlight on water simply vanished. "The chain," Davos murmured. 7 hells. They did it after all. He had heard the rumors. A great iron chain laid across the mouth of the Blackwater rush, sunk by day, raised by night. A folly, some had called it. A wild scheme conjured by that Lannister dwarf, others said. Davos had prayed it was only talk. Stannis' jaw flexed. "We break it," he said, "or we sail over it on a bridge of their corpses. Signal the vanguard to attack. Let them taste our steel." Melisandre's smile was small and strange. "Steel will not break that chain," she said, "but fire will." Davos turned to her, unease tightening his chest. "Fire won't melt iron fast enough, my lady. Not before their scorpions shred us and their catapults." He broke off. The ruby at her throat was glowing brighter now, the light crawling like something alive beneath the stone's surface. A faint warmth prickled his skin. "The river is thick with their treachery," she said. Wildfire in hidden casks, green and hungry. They mean to burn my king upon his own water. But their flames are his, if he will claim them. Stannis regarded her. Whatever he thought of her god, he believed in victory, and Melisandre had never yet failed him. "What must I do?" he asked. Melisandre stepped close. In the red gleam, the planes of his face looked carved, the old scar by his mouth a darker slash. She raised her hand and pressed her palm flat against the steel over his heart. "Look into the fire," she whispered. "No, not with your eyes, with your will." They heat the jars already, far within the city. They await the signal. The imp stands on the walls with torch in hand, thinking himself cunning. "Call the flame your grace. Claim it. Bend it as you will bend this realm. Say the words with me." Her other hand found Davos's wrist like a shackle. "You too, Onion Knight. You were remade in fire, were you not? Good. You understand." Davos opened his mouth to protest, but her fingers were surprisingly strong, her skin hot as a brand. Stannis nodded once. That was all it took. Melisandre began to chant. The language was no tongue Davos knew. The sounds were harsh and liquid at once, slipping and hissing, catching against his ears like barbs. The men on the deck stirred uneasily, glancing at one another. Some made signs of the seven, others spat for luck. The nearest ship's lantern guttered, its flame drawing suddenly higher, lengthening like a tongue. "Say it," Melisandre urged. "My king, say it with me. Yours is the right. Yours is the flame." Stannis Baratheon, least loved of the Baratheon brothers, lawful heir denied and coldly patient, drew himself up. He had never been a man for theatrics. The only fire Davos had ever seen in him was a banked thing, deep and fierce and carefully contained. Now, under the red woman's gaze, something in him seemed to catch. He repeated the words after her. His voice was raspy at first, and used to this strange cadence, but with each phrase it steadied, tightened, deepened. Davos did not understand the meaning, yet a prickle ran along his scalp, down his spine. "Say it, sire," Melisandre murmured to him. The ruby flared. "You have seen his power. You have knelt before it without knowing. Do you fear your god's gifts?" Davos had knelt in fire once, but not before her god. He had knelt before Lord Stannis on a smuggler's deck, as the king took his hand and sliced away fingertip after fingertip with a bright, merciless blade. That pain had been clean even as the blood ran. This felt like drowning in boiling water. Yet Stannis's eyes were on him, dark and unyielding. Davos swallowed. He forced his tongue around the foreign syllables. Each one tasted like ash. The deck seemed to sway harder under his feet, though the bay was calm. Somewhere far ahead a bell began to ring, frantic, spearing the night. And then the world exploded green. He had seen wildfire before in smaller measures. He had seen what a single pot could do to a ship's deck, to human flesh. This was different. A line of the river simply erupted, a wall of emerald flame clawing skyward, painting the night a sick fever color. The sound hit a moment later, a boom that rattled teeth and bones, followed by a roar like some monstrous beast. "Mother have mercy," someone whispered. The leading ships were caught in the first blast. Davos saw one galley vanish entirely, their one heartbeat and gone the next, replaced by a blossoming flower of fire. Men became silhouettes of screaming light. The heat rolled over them in a suffocating wave. Davos staggered back, his lungs seized. The river ahead was a seething expanse of green, petals of flame opening outward as more patches ignited, like diseased blooms spreading in a corrupted garden. The Lannisters had laid their traps well, but something was wrong. The wildfire did not spread only forward. It curled, hesitated, then began to twist, drawing in on itself. The roaring wall buckled as if pulled by invisible hands. Jets of flame shot sideways, then arced back toward the city, trailing smears of emerald across the Blackwater. The smell was wrong too. Not only pitch and burning flesh, but something sharp and sweet, like resin on a brazier, like incense in a red temple. Melisandre's voice rose, feverish now, a lance cutting through the chaos. Stannis' jaw was clenched, his teeth bared as he forced the alien words out, not as petition but as command. Davos, gasping, found he could not stop saying them. They poured from him like blood from an opened vein. The chain at the river mouth glowed dull red where the wildfire washed over it. Then brighter, brighter still. With a shriek like a dying beast, it snapped. The sound echoed across the bay, a drawn-out metallic wail. The front ranks of burning ships, entangled with the chain, broke free in fragments. Some shattered, rolling wreckage and men alike into the boiling water. Others lurched forward, half-consumed husks carried by momentum and accident into the harbor. Behind them, the rest of Stannis' fleet surged in through the gap. The wildfire followed them. Not in great blooming sheets now, but in whips and tongues, writhing aerial serpents that slithered along the river's surface. They darted past Stannis' ships as if they were stones in a stream, leaping instead for the shadowed hulls moored under the city's walls. Lannister ships caught fire like dry brush. The quays erupted as hidden stores ignited. The pyre the imp had meant for his enemies now ate his own. Davos stared, his skin prickling. Shadows capered madly on mast and sail and men, monstrous, elongated things that bore no resemblance to the people who cast them. "Do you see?" Melisandre whispered. Her hand had never left Davos's wrist. Her fingers were blistering hot now, but he could not pull away. The fire knows its master. Stannis' eyes reflected green and red at once, colors warring in their depths. "Signal the assault," he said. His voice was rough, but steady. "Now, while their harbor burns." The drums thudded. The fleet surged faster, rowing for the river mouth, for the burning waterfront, for the city that had never expected him to come with the fire on his side. On the southern walls, a bell tolled wildly and then fell silent with a distant crash. In the Red Keep, Sansa Stark woke to the sound of distant thunder and the smell of smoke. For a moment she thought she was home again, in Winterfell, and that the sound was a summer storm rolling over the roofs, the smell the comfortable tang of the great hall's hearth fires. Her heart leapt, foolish and bright, until she opened her eyes and saw the carved lions leering down at her from the chamber's canopy, and the fire on the hearth was a mean, sulky little thing that gave more smoke than warmth. The thunder came again, closer now, a deep boom that made the shutters rattle. The smoke had an edge to it, a sweet sickness she recognized from the day the alchemists had come to show the king their pretty tricks. Wildfire. Sansa swung her legs out of bed. Her bare feet met the cold of the tiles. The chamber was dark save for the hearth's sullen glow. Her maid had not come to wake her yet. Perhaps it was still early. Perhaps the bells had not. The bells began all at once, a shrill clamor from every sept and tower in the city. Alarm bells, not the measured, mournful toll of a death. She had heard them during the riot, that terrible day when the crowd had surged around Joffrey's litter, when hands had reached for her and she had thought she would be torn apart. She snatched up her robe, fumbling with the ties, and stumbled to the window. The shutters were stiff, stubborn as old men, but she forced them open with both hands. The sky over the city was stained an awful color, a bruised, livid green. Down by the river, beyond the black shapes of rooftops, flames boiled upward in great sheets. For a heartbeat her mind refused to make sense of the scale. It was too large, too bright, like a sunrise gone cruel. From somewhere in the keep came a woman's scream, high and sharp. Then another boom rolled over the hill, and another, like giants pounding on a door. The door to her chamber flew open. Her maid burst inside, hair loose, eyes white with fear. "My lady," she panted. "My lady, dress quick. They've sent for you. The queen says you must come at once. Stannis is in the bay. He's come with his fleet. The city's burning. Gods help us." The girl's hands shook as she reached for Sansa's gown. Sansa pushed them away gently. "I can dress myself," she said, though her arms felt heavy and clumsy. her thoughts scattered like sparrows. Stannis. Stannis was Robert's brother, the one they all said had the better claim, the one who had sent that terrible letter about Cersei and her children. And now he was here. The gown was Lannister crimson, cloth of gold at the sleeves, lion-headed clasps at the shoulders. Sansa's fingers hesitated on the rich fabric. She thought of her father in his cell, asking her to go to Cersei to beg mercy. She thought of Joffrey's laughter on the steps of the Sept, the way the crowd's roar had turned to a groan as the sword had fallen, the way her father's blood had soaked into the stone and the sun had shone so brightly on the steel helmets that she had gone half blind. She pulled the gown on anyway. She had no other. She followed the maid down the corridor, her slippers whispering on the marble. The Red Keep's halls were a chaos of motion, servants scuttling like frightened mice, guards shouting, lesser lords in half-fastened armor bellowing for their squires. The air grew hotter as they descended toward the Queen's apartments, the smoke thicker until Sansa's eyes stung. Cersei waited in the outer solar, robed not in queenly finery but in a high-necked gown of dark green velvet. Her golden hair was loose about her shoulders, a goblet of wine in her hand though the morning had barely begun. Her cheeks were flushed, her smile thin and brittle. Sansa! She glided forward, clasping Sansa's hands. Her fingers were cold despite the heat in the room. There you are. I thought they had mislaid you. I came as soon as I... Yes, yes. Cersei waved a hand. We have little time for courtesies, I'm afraid. Our good Stannis has chosen to arrive sooner than expected. Impatient, like all men of narrow mind, she drained her goblet and gestured for more. The serving girl's hands trembled so much that the wine slopped over the rim. Is it true? Sansa asked. The bay, the ships, the alchemist's jars are doing their work, Cersei interrupted. Tyrion swore it would be so. That is his battle down there. Her lip curled faintly. If he fails, we all die. If he succeeds, we may yet live long enough to be taken in some other fashion. Comforting, is it not? Sansa swallowed. Joffrey. Where is he, your grace? With the men, of course. Cersei's smile sharpened. A king must show his face to his subjects in their hour of need. It steals their courage, so Tyrion says. Personally, I think it steals only their hatred, but let the imp have his follies. My son is with the knights on the walls. He will be safe enough so long as someone remembers to pull him back when the stones start flying. You look afraid, little dove. The wine sloshed again as the queen moved. Her hand, suddenly gentle, brushed a curl from Sansa's cheek. Sansa began. You should be afraid, Cersei said. Fear is a woman's armor. It sharpens us. We wear it under our skirts and smiles. You would do well to wrap yourself in it. Her eyes slid away. For a moment she stared past Sansa, toward the shuttered windows, as if she could see through stone and distance to the burning harbor below. If the city falls, she said softly, Stannis will come up that hill like a storm. He is not his brother. There is no mercy in him. He will not spare my children. He will not spare you. He will call it justice and sleep well after. Sansa's heart thumped, a frantic bird. I could go to him, she said before she thought better. I am Eddard Stark's daughter. My lord father was a traitor. Cersei's voice snapped like a whip. Say it. Say the word. Sansa flinched. A traitor, she whispered, shame biting at her throat. Cersei smiled thinly. Good. Remember what loyalty buys you in this city. She waved a hand toward the inner chambers. Go to the other ladies. Sit with them. Pray to your northern gods if you like, though I think mine listen a bit more closely. I will join you later. Where will you be, your grace? Sansa heard herself ask. Cersei raised the goblet. Where I always am, she said. Waiting for men to decide what they will do with me. Davos's world narrowed to sweat and smoke and the rhythmic crash of oars. The galley had driven up onto a half-sunken hulk near the quay. Men leapt down onto the shifting wreck, clambered along it, and scrambled up onto the stone steps slick with river water and blood. Above them, Gold cloaks swarmed along the parapets, yelling, hurling down spears and rocks and pots of oil. A spattering rain of arrows hissed from the walls. "Shields!" the captain roared. "Forward, dogs! For the king!" Davos's shield was plain and old and scarred, but he lifted it all the same, feeling the shock as a shaft thudded into the painted wood. He had put aside his luck smuggler's finger bones after they sank with his ship off Storm's End. He had thought that if the Seven or the Red God or any other power in the world wanted him, they could find him without bones to mark him. Only now, with the fire of the bay at his back and the enemy walls ahead, did he feel truly bare. He pushed forward with the rest, shoulder to shoulder with men from the Rainwood and Shipbreaker Bay, farmers' sons and second sons and old soldiers whose names he did not know. The first rank reached the top of the quay steps and crashed headlong into the gold cloaks. The City Watch had never seen real war. They had put down riots and brawls, faced drunkards and hungry mobs and the occasional sellsword who thought his coin bought him immunity. Against Stannis' men, hardened by siege and march, they folded like wet paper at first. Then the stones began to fall. The defenders had dragged small scorpions and heavy crossbows to the parapets. They had filled barrels with rocks and scrap iron and shoved them over the side. A hail of death pelted the attackers. A man to Davos's left fell without a sound. The back of his skull caved in. Another screamed as a jag of iron tore his cheek open from jaw to eye. Somewhere above, a voice shouted commands with a rough, impatient edge. Davos glimpsed a squat figure darting along the wall, half hidden by smoke. The dwarf, he thought. The imp. His hair and beard were singed, his face smeared black and green. "Push, you bastards!" the imp bellowed. "Unless you want them fucking your corpses too." The gold cloaks cheered raggedly, heartened by someone who sounded more like them than the preening knights who usually gave orders. They braced behind their shields. The next wave of Stannis' attackers hit them and stuck, bodies piling, steel ringing, men cursing and grunting with the effort. For a moment, the assault stalled. Davos's lungs burned. Sweat ran into his eyes, stinging. He could feel the weight of the city looming above, all its brick and stone and filth and fear pressing down. His arm ached with every stroke of his sword. The wildfire burned behind them, though much had flowed away to feast on the enemy's own ships and docks. Its eerie green light painted everything in nightmare hues. Men's faces, already smeared with soot and blood, looked monstrous. From the river, another sound rose. A drum, deep and steady. Then another and another. Davos risked a glance back. More of Stannis' ships were maneuvering into position along the waterfront, prow to prow, their sides slamming against one another as they mashed into a crude, swaying line of wood and rope and flesh. Gangplanks dropped. Men swarmed across, assembling what the imp had been too cautious or too clever to imagine. A bridge not of iron chain, but of human bodies. And behind them, near the mouth of the river, Stannis' flagship loomed, crimson banner snapping. On the prow, a small figure in red stood with arms upraised, the ruby at her throat blazing like captured lightning. Melisandre's voice drifted faintly even over the din, a high, fierce thread. Davos did not know the words this time, but he felt them, like a pressure in the air. The wildfire shuddered, as if in answer. Its flames leapt higher, then narrowed, streams of green shooting toward the walls like arrows of light. They struck the crenellations and clung, hissing, devouring stone and man alike. Gold cloaks shrieked as fire crawled up their legs, along their spears. Some dropped to the walkways and rolled, beating at their burning clothes. Others leapt from the walls in panic, their bodies trailing fire, to smash on the stones below. "Now!" someone shouted from amidst Stannis' vanguard. "For Storm's End, for the true king." The line surged. Davos forgot the Red Woman, forgot the imp, forgot the chain that had broken, the river that burned. The world narrowed again to the man in front of him, a gold cloak with wide eyes and a patchy beard, too young for that much fear. Davos twisted his blade under the boy's guard and into his belly. The gold cloak gasped, Davos shoved him aside, stepped over him, up another stone, up, until suddenly there was no more up and he was on the parapet. He stood on the walls of King's Landing. From here the city spread out in a churned sprawl, its close-packed houses like scabs on a wound. Smoke coiled from a dozen fires, black mingling with the unnatural green. The sound was a great clamor, bells and screams and the clash of steel, undercut by the steady drumbeat of the river below. Near the gate tower, a knot of armored knights rallied the remaining watch. At their center, a young man in gilded plate capered and slashed with his sword, shouting something Davos could not hear. Joffrey, he thought. Surely. The boy king rode no horse now, only his own panic, but he still swung steel at any within reach. A Kingsguard knight with pale hair hovered near him, deflecting blows meant for the boy. Beyond them, further up the hill, the great Sept's domes gleamed faintly through the smoke, its 7 crystal towers catching the false light of the wildfire. Between here and there lay the Red Keep, the heart of the usurped kingdom. Stannis would be there. Davos drove forward along the wall walk, hacking, shoving, his breath tearing at his throat. Men fell, arrows hissed around him. Somewhere to his right, a man with a scarred face and mismatched armor laughed even as he split a gold cloak's helm open. To his left, a huge knight in antlered helm laid about with a 2-handed axe, roaring House Baratheon's stag. "For the king!" they shouted. "For Stannis!" In the chaos, the imp fought like a demon. Davos saw him ahead, standing on a broken merlin, his mismatched armor shining dully. His axe, small for a man but just right for him, rose and fell with brutal efficiency. He cursed as he swung, words as sharp as his blade. A boulder from some catapult crashed into the wall a dozen yards away, showering them with shards of stone. The parapet shook. Men staggered. The imp lost his footing for a heartbeat. A gold cloak seized the chance, lunging at him with spear lowered. Davos moved without thinking. He slammed his shield up, knocking the spear aside. The point glanced off the iron and scraped past his ear. He felt the heat of breath on his neck, then the weight of the gold cloak's body slamming into him. They fell together against the parapet. Davos's shoulder sent up a scream of pain. He twisted, drove his knife into the man's side. The gold cloak spasmed and went limp. The imp scrambled to his feet, breathing hard. His eyes met Davos's. They were very green and very tired. "For that, friend," Tyrion Lannister panted. "You have my thanks. Though I'd be wary, my friends often come to poor ends." Davos stared, recognizing him from descriptions, from a distance at Dragonstone's War Council. Before he could speak, a shadow loomed behind the dwarf, one of Stannis' own knights, visor down, sword raised. The blade smashed into the side of Tyrion's face. It was not one of the imp's enemies who struck him down after all, but a man sworn to Stannis. Perhaps the knight mistook him for some lesser foe in the melee. Perhaps he knew exactly who he was and thought to rid his new king of a dangerous mind. Tyrion crumpled, blood spraying. Davos flinched back, heart lurching. He had saved the man's life only to see it snatched away an instant later. "Off the wall!" someone bellowed. "Through the gate! The king's standard flies in the yard!" Davos spared the dwarf one last glance. The little man twitched, trying to move, but his eyes were already unfocusing. The tide swept Davos away, down a stair, through a tower where bodies lay thick, into the courtyard beyond the gate. The great wooden doors hung open, one on broken hinges. Smoke coiled thick here too, but beneath it, beneath the screams and clang, Davos glimpsed a banner he had followed across so many marches. A flaming heart beneath a crowned stag. Stannis Baratheon's standard flew over the inner yard of King's Landing. By nightfall, the city belonged to him. It did not fall all at once, like a tower whose foundations had been eaten away. It came apart in pieces, as men died and fled and yielded, as one gate then another opened, as pockets of resistance were surrounded and cut down. The gold cloaks, never a true army, broke fastest. Many stripped off their cloaks and tried to melt into the crowd. Some were caught and killed, some slipped away. The little birds of Varys scattered. The royal kitchens burned. The flea-bottom whores screamed and laughed and serviced whichever men pointed steel at them that hour, for coin or for life. In the Red Keep, Cersei Lannister sat in Maegor's holdfast with her youngest son on her lap and a small vial of clear liquid in her hand. She turned it between two fingers, watching the light catch in the glass. Tommen slept, his thumb in his mouth, head heavy against her breast. Too gentle, she thought, too sweet. She tried to imagine him on a throne, giving orders to hard men, cutting out rot, making the realm tremble. It was like trying to imagine a kitten tearing apart a direwolf. The walls shook with the distant thump of a ramming beam. She took another sip of wine. The world blurred pleasantly at the edges. The other ladies gathered with her. Marjorie Tyrell, long-necked and watchful. Lolly Stokeworth, weeping softly. Felice Stokeworth, mouthing prayers. Several of Cersei's cousins, pale and jittery, were shadows more than people. Sansa was there too, her hands clenched in her lap, knuckles white. Cersei watched her over the rim of her goblet. So pretty, so proper, so stupid. "Drink, child," Cersei said. "It will make the fear less ugly." Sansa shook her head. "I do not think I should, Your Grace." Cersei snorted. "You think too much. Very well. Sit there and tremble, then. When Stannis comes through that door, remember that I offered you kindness." She tightened her arms around Tommen. Her fingers pressed into soft flesh. He stirred, murmured, did not wake. If the worst came, she would not let him fall into their hands. She had failed Joffrey in so many ways. Let him be fashioned by Robert's neglect and the Hound's brutality and her own bitterness. She had watched him become something sharp and cruel and small. But Tommen, she could spare Tommen. The vial felt heavy and fragile in her palm. One crack, one good throw against the wall, and its contents would spill onto the hearth, onto the rushes. The smoke would be invisible, the maester had said. The taste on the air faint as new snow. It would be a gentle death, he'd promised. As gentle as any death could be. Cersei did not trust maesters, but she trusted lions, and her children were hers. She would see to their ending herself if she must. The pounding grew louder. The holdfast's great doors shuddered. Somewhere below, men screamed and steel rang. Cersei set the vial down carefully on the table beside her and took another drink of wine. "Your Grace," one of her cousins whispered, "we could parley, send a white flag." "Offer? Offer what?" Cersei asked. "Gold? There is more gold in Casterly Rock than in this city 100 times over. Lands? Stannis has what he wants. He has the capital. He has the throne, if he dares sit it. All that remains to him is to show the realm what sort of king he will be. Mercy is for men like my brother. He will make a show of us." She smiled, and it felt like baring her teeth. "Do not weep so, lollies. It might be endurable. I hear Stannis has no taste for bedplay. You may be lucky enough to die quickly." The other woman sobbed harder. Marjorie Tyrell's lips thinned. She said nothing. Her eyes were distant, calculating. The doors burst inward. They did not so much open as explode. A ram's last blow, or perhaps some fire beneath the hinges, had done its work. Hinges tore free, wood splintered. The rush of air sucked out the candle flames for a heartbeat, plunging the hall into near darkness as the doors crashed to the floor. Men stormed in. Not gold cloaks and haphazard armor, but soldiers in Baratheon black and fiery red. Their breastplates dented and blackened from battle, their eyes hard with victory and weariness. They fanned out quickly, taking positions along the walls, spears ready. Between them came a man in heavy plate, his cloak ragged, his face streaked with soot. His crown was plain, a band of cold-silvered steel around his brow. Nothing like Robert's heavy gold monstrosity or Joffrey's circlet of twisted metal. His eyes were pale and pitiless. Cersei rose slowly, Tommen clutched tight, the goblet still in her other hand. "Lord Stannis," she said. She would not call him king. How good of you to visit. We were just praying for your soul." Stannis Baratheon regarded her in silence. His gaze flicked to the table, to the vial glinting there. Something like understanding passed through his eyes. "Cersei Lannister," he said at last. "In the name of Robert, who was my brother and your lawful king, I arrest you for treason, adultery, and the murder of Lord Eddard Stark and Lord Jon Arryn." He looked past her to the cluster of women. "And all here present shall be held until the truth of their part in your crimes is known." His voice was rough from smoke and shouting, but it held the implacable flatness Davos knew all too well. There was no triumph there, only grim purpose. Cersei laughed. The sound was higher than she intended. Tommen stirred, whimpered. "You arrest me," she said. "You who sat in your keep and sulked while my husband bled on your step. You who lift your hand only when something is to be taken. Where were you when the king needed you, Stannis? Counting ships? Hoarding complaints?" Stannis's jaw clenched. "I rode to war at his side in the rebellion," he said. "I held Storm's End when all others abandoned it. I watched my men starve while Mace Tyrell feasted on our graves. I did my duty and was rewarded with scraps, while your father took the fat." Cersei's face twitched at the mention of Tywin. "My father will not let this stand." "Your father is fleeing," Stannis replied. "His host lies broken on the King's Road. He chose his battle poorly, as he chose his king. He will not reach the city tonight, and by tomorrow it will be too late." For the first time, a flicker of something like satisfaction touched his mouth. Cersei's hand tightened on Tommen so hard he whimpered. Her gaze darted again to the vial on the table. One lunge, one shattering, and she could deny this man at least one of his prizes. Stannis followed the glance, and his sword cleared its sheath a hair's breadth. "Do not," he said quietly. Cersei looked back at him. For a moment they stared at one another, lioness and gaunt hound. Then she smiled, slow and sharp. "You will kill us anyway." "I will try you," Stannis said. "Your son Joffrey has already fled the field. I saw him dragged from the walls like a coward. He will be taken. His bastardy will be proved. His crimes proclaimed openly. The realm will see. If you confess, there may be mercy for the boy." He nodded to Tommen. "That one is not yet stained." Cersei laughed again, though her eyes were bright with tears now. "Mercy, from you." She lifted her goblet, tilted it, watching the dark red swirl. "You speak of justice, Lord Stannis, but this is not justice. It is vengeance. You hate my family because we took what you think was yours. All this talk of rightful kingship, of duty, it is only the language you put on your hunger. You are a dog that has waited too long, and now you have the bone in your teeth at last. Do you think the gods care what you name it?" Stannis's mouth thinned. "If you mean to comfort yourself with lies, do so in your cell," he said. "Take the woman, take the boy." He stepped aside. Two of his guards advanced. Cersei drew Tommen closer. He woke fully now, whimpering, eyes huge. "Mother!" "Hush," she said. "Be brave, my love." She looked at Stannis as the guards took hold of her arms. Her smile was small and poisonous. "You think you have one," she said softly, "but you have only changed the shape of the nightmare. This city will devour you, as it devoured every king before. You are not steel, Stannis. You are flesh, and it will rot and burn like all the rest." He did not answer. He did not have to. His silence was its own sort of sentence. They dragged her away. Tommen reached for her, wailing. The vial on the table remained intact. For now, Sansa remained seated, hands trembling in her lap. Her mind buzzed with too many thoughts to hold. Eddard Stark proclaimed innocent at last. Joffrey called a coward. Tommen crying. The queen dragged like a criminal. Lord Stannis, tall and grim, sword still bare. He looked at her as he turned to go. "You are Eddard Stark's daughter," he said. It was not a question. "Yes, your grace," she whispered, though he had not yet claimed the title aloud. "You are no traitor," Stannis said. "Whatever your father did, he paid for with more blood than was just." You are my subject, and I will have your loyalty." His gaze flicked to the lion clasps on her gown. "We will see you properly arrayed." A burst of wild hope flared in her chest. "My lord, your grace, will you send me home?" "Home." A word like a prayer. Stannis's face shifted, just a little. "The North is not yet at peace," he said. "Your brother calls himself king. He has broken faith as well. When the time comes, we will speak of what is owed to House Stark. For now, you will be kept under guard, for your own safety and for mine." He glanced at one of his officers. "Ser Roland, see that the girl is given decent chambers, away from the Lannisters' brood. No harm is to come to her. If any man touches her without my leave, I will have him flayed and fed to the city's dogs." His eyes cut back to Sansa. "You will not be Joffrey's toy again. Remember that when men who wore his colors come to you with smiles." He left then, taking his grim certainty with him, and the hall seemed emptier for a moment despite the number of people still within. In the days that followed, King's Landing learned what sort of King Stannis Baratheon would be. He did not allow the sack the city feared. His men were kept on a short leash. Any soldier caught robbing or raping was strung up by his heels from the walls, his name carved into his chest as warning. Davos watched them swing, a cluster of hard shapes against the sky, and thought that fear might do as much to hold the city as any chain across its river. Yet the people suffered all the same. The fighting had torn apart docks and markets. Stores of grain and fish had burned. Wildfire had eaten more than ships and soldiers. Whole streets by the river were gone, left a stinking, smoldering wasteland. The stench of charred flesh hung over the bay. Refugees from the worst-hit districts huddled in the squares, coughing in the smoke, begging for bread that did not exist. Stannis's quartermasters did what they could, but what they could do was not enough. The executions began on the third day. They held them in the square before the Great September, under the watchful eyes of its 7 towers. The Septons had barred the doors against them at first, but hunger and fear weakened courage as surely as any siege. When Stannis's men battered in the side doors and stormed the sanctuary, they found most of the holy men on their knees before the statues of the 7, praying for deliverance that did not come. The High Septon, dragged before Stannis in his golden crystal crown, had tried to speak of sacred law and forbidden kingslaying and the anointed of the 7. He had not finished his first sentence before Stannis ordered him stripped and thrown in the black cells. "He blessed a bastard as king," Stannis said. "He put crown and oil to a lie. He can explain that to whatever god will hear him." The first to die were the pyromancers whose wildfire had destroyed so much of his fleet and his foes both. Then the worst of the goldcloaks who had taken coin to betray the city or desert their posts. Then came smaller men, lesser lords and knights and merchants who had profited from chaos. Cersei's trial was delayed. Stannis said he would not hurry a matter of such weight. In truth, Davos suspected he wanted to assemble enough proof that none could deny it. Letters went out to Oldtown, to the Eyrie, to Riverrun, to Winterfell, if Winterfell still stood, calling for maesters and lords and men who had seen what they should not. Meanwhile, Joffrey was found trying to flee the city in a turnip cart. The boy king, once wrapped in silks and arrogance, was hauled before Stannis in a coarse peasant's tunic, his hair hacked short. He spat and screamed and threatened, but his voice had a crack in it now, a shrill edge that made it hard to forget he was 15 at most. "I am your king," he shrieked. "My grandfather will cut you to pieces, you goat-faced bastard. My mother will have your head on a spike." Your mother is in my dungeons," Stannis said. "Your grandfather runs from a battle he has already lost, and you are the son of Ser Jaime Lannister and Cersei his sister, born of incest and treason. Whatever else you are not my king." He pronounced sentence there in the throne room, under the eyes of the lords and captains who had survived the battle and the servants who dared watch from the shadows. "In the name of Robert of House Baratheon," Stannis said, "by the rights of blood and law denied me these 15 years, I strip you of all titles. Joffrey Waters, you are condemned for the murder of Lord Eddard Stark and the abuse of your subjects. You shall die by the sword. There will be no burning. You are not worthy of the flame." Joffrey's eyes, always bright with mean cruelty, went wide with a new terror. He begged then, blubbering. The sound was disgusting and pitiable all at once. Sansa watched from a balcony, hidden by a screen of stonework. She pressed her hands over her mouth to keep from crying out. Part of her wanted to see him suffer for what he had done. Another part remembered the moments when he had been kind, when he had smiled at her before his poisoned heart had shone. Mostly she felt numb. The sword that ended Joffrey was not Stannis's. It was a stranger's, one of the king's chosen champions, a knight without great name who had survived too much to be denied such an honor. The blade flashed, fell, rose red. The boy's head rolled, crownless, across the marble, leaving a smear of blood. Stannis did not smile. He did not flinch. When it was done, he nodded once, as if an item on a tally had been crossed out. Then he turned to the lords assembled and spoke of law and proof, of bastardy and succession, of the oaths they had sworn to the Baratheon line. "I am not my brother," he said. "I will not buy your loyalty with tourneys and feasts, nor pardon treason because it is convenient. You made oaths. You will keep them, or you will answer for it in fire and blood." It was not the speech of a man seeking friends. It was a declaration cold as iron. In the quiet that followed, Melisandre stepped forward. She had sat through the trial and beheading in silence, eyes fixed on Joffrey in a hungry way that made Davos's skin crawl. Now she took her place, at Stannis' side as naturally as if it had always been hers. "The false kings fall," she said, her voice ringing oddly in the high chamber. "First Renly, now this one. The usurpers are cast down. Only the true king stands, anointed not by your weak seps but by the Lord of Light, whose power burned his enemies on the water and broke their chain and shield. You have seen it with your own eyes." Her gaze swept the room, lingering on the banners of houses Celtigar, Valerion, Bar Emmon, Stokeworth, Rosby, and others newly turned. "The night gathers beyond your knowing," she said. "From the cold, from the dark, from the dead. When it comes, only fire will stand against it. Only one king holds that fire. Swear to him not only with your tongues and swords, but with your souls. Put aside your false gods, these mute idols of wood and stone, and embrace the Lord of Light, whose flames showed you your peril and your salvation." Murmurs stirred the hall. Some faces were blank with confusion, others drawn with suspicion or outright anger. The Septons present looked ready to faint. Stannis' mouth tightened. He had not ordered her to speak, but he did not stop her either. Davos, watching from below, felt his stomach knot. Later, in the King's Solar, he spoke. "You will lose the realm if you push her god too hard, your grace," he said. "The small folk are frightened, hungry, angry. The lords are wary. Give them days to catch their breath before you change their hearts." Stannis sat at the table where Robert had once sprawled and drunk and laughed. The surface was bare now save for maps and reports, neat in their stacks. He had removed his crown and rubbed the bridge of his nose as if to chase away a headache. "Melisandre says we will lose more than the realm if we do not," he said. "She sees things in the flames, cold shadows, dead men walking. She says this city is a tinderbox before a great winter. She sees what she wishes to see," Davos said, more sharply than he intended. "And what you wish to believe. I have no love for the Lannisters' septs and statues, but the people do. They've prayed to the Seven all their lives. If you tear their gods from them, the fear you speak of will turn on you." Stannis' jaw worked. "You think I take joy in it?" he snapped. "Do you think this is a game to me, Davos? I have no fondness for her flames or her talk of prophecy. But she warned me of the wildfire. She told me of the chain. She saw Tywin's move before he made it. Without her, I would be ashes on the Blackwater and that boy would still sit my throne." Davos could not deny it. He could still feel the heat of the wildfire, the way it had twisted like a living thing away from their ships and onto the enemies. No ordinary fire did that. Burning the gods' wood at Dragonstone did not win you many friends, he said quietly. Burning the seps here will win you fewer. I am a poor man and lowborn, your grace, but I know people. They will not bear it. People, Stannis snorted. They bore Joffrey. They bore Robert. They bore the Mad King burning men with his own wildfire. They will bear me. They bore them because they feared them, Davos replied. Fear can hold a man to a king for a day, perhaps a year, but it will not hold him to his son. If you want your reign to last longer than your own life, you must give them something more. Stannis' eyes were flinty. And what do you suggest, smuggler? Songs? Tourneys? Whores and wine? Justice, Davos said simply. The thing you have always wanted for yourself. Give it to them. Feed them before you punish them. Mend what was broken before you burn what offends you. He hesitated. And leave their faith alone. Let their sept stand. Melisandre stepped from the shadows by the hearth. Davos cursed himself for not noticing her there. The red of her gown blended strangely with the flicker of the fire, as if she were part of it. Their faith will not feed them, she said. It will not stand against the darkness I have seen. They must be taught to look to the true light. Half measures will not suffice. Stannis' eyes went from Davos to Melisandre and back. For a moment, Davos thought the king might rail at the Red Woman. Tell her to go back to whatever Eastern temple had spawned her. Instead, he said, "We will do both." "Your grace," Davos said. "We will repair the granaries and open them," Stannis said. "We will send ships to the Arbor for more grain, and to Dorne if they will trade. We will set fair levies and punish the corrupt. And we will cleanse this city of the false idols that have misled it. The septs will not stand above the law. Neither will Melisandre's temple. I am the king. All gods, real or imagined, answer to me in this realm." Melisandre's lips curved faintly. Davos could not tell if she was pleased or amused. "You would put your crown above the Lord of Light?" she murmured. "Bold, for one who holds his favor by such slender threads." "I hold this throne by ships and steel and law," Stannis said. "If your lord wishes me to keep it, perhaps he should remember that. You are his chosen." Melisandre's eyes gleamed. "He will not abandon you, not if you do as he commands." "I will do as my duty commands," Stannis replied. "If your god objects, he can take it up with me when the war is done." He turned back to Davos. "I will order the Septons to remain at their posts, to minister to the people. They will swear to me and to no other king. The statues will remain for now. But there will be no more lies from their pulpits. No more talk of Joffrey the Anointed. If they cannot keep their tongues, they can keep the company of your High Septon in my dungeons." Davos inclined his head. It was not all he wished, but it was more than he had feared. Still, unease prickled at him. A compromise between fire and faith left much that could still burn. Word came of Tywin Lannister's rout a week later. He had marched hard from the west with Mace Tyrell's host at his back, banners snapping bright on the King's Road. By the time their vanguard reached the city's outer fields, the smoke from the harbor was visible, the air thick with the stink of burning and the acrid tang of wildfire. Scouts reported Baratheon banners on the walls and the gold lions hauling down. Tywin paused, then ordered his army into battle formation. "Folly," Mace Tyrell grumbled. "The city's lost. Let us fall back to the Mander, regather our strength. The Stormlander's men will be half dead with fighting. We can choose the ground, bleed him proper." But Tywin Lannister was not a man to retreat without blood. He had staked too much on this campaign. To break without a fight would be to admit defeat before the realm. He pressed on. What he found waiting for him on the King's Road was not a broken, exhausted army, but one newly emboldened by victory and fueled by the harsh zeal of a king whose faith had been vindicated by wildfire turned against its makers. Stannis marched out from the city with 20,000 men and the Red Woman at his side. The burned-out fields became a killing ground. Tyrell cavalry thundered in, only to find hidden pits and sharpened stakes and lines of Stormlander pikes braced firm. The Lannister center, weighted with heavy infantry, bogged down in churned, bloody mud. The air grew thick with arrows and the stench of men who had ridden hard and eaten poorly and now fought for their lives under a pitiless sun. Davos rode at Stannis' right, fingers clumsy on the reins. He had never liked fighting on horseback. The ground felt too far away. He trusted ships and his own 2 feet more than any beast. But appearances mattered. The men needed to see their king's closest counselors at his side. Melisandre did not ride. She walked, barefoot, her red skirts trailing in the dust, the ruby at her throat beating like a second heart. When Lannister scouts charged her, their horses screamed and shied as if they had run at a dragon. Men fell thrashing, as if some invisible flame had licked at their nerves. Those who remained fled, pale and shaking, babbling of shadows and burning eyes. The battle swayed. For a moment, when the Tyrell center punched a bloody gap in Stannis' left, it seemed they might break through. Then a fresh storm of arrows rained down from a rise where Stannis had placed archers from the marchlands. The Knights of the Reach, in their bright armor and gilded plumes, tumbled from their saddles into the churned red muck like so many bright toys cast aside. In the end, it came down to Tywin himself, standing amid a knot of Westermen as the lines shattered around him. He fought with a great sword, broad and unadorned, his golden hair dulled with sweat and dirt. His horse lay dead beside him, a spear protruding from its ribs. Men died around him in 2s and 3s, cut down by Stormlander axes and Dornish spears, by Reachmen who had turned their cloaks in the chaos, by lesser men desperate for a name. Stannis approached on foot, helm under his arm, his face grim. "Lord Tywin," he said, "do you yield?" Tywin's gaze flicked over the battlefield. Broken standards lay trampled in the mud. Fire crawled in patches where oil had spilled and lit. The screams of the wounded rose like a ghastly choir. In the distance, the Red Keep's towers speared the sky, new banners snapping from their heights. He wiped blood from his eyes with the back of his hand. "I yield only to a king," he said. Stannis' mouth twitched. "That is fortunate," he answered. "There is a king here." Tywin looked at him a long moment. Somewhere in that hard, flinty gaze, Davos thought he glimpsed a sort of cold appraisal, weighing this man who had been his brother's resentful shadow so long. "Very well," Tywin said. He let his sword fall point down into the mud and stepped away from it. "I yield, but understand this, Baratheon. You have won a battle, perhaps even a throne. You have not yet won a realm." He looked past Stannis, to where Melisandre watched with her unreadable red gaze. "And if you try to hold it with fire alone," he said quietly, "you will find it burns in your hands." They brought him to King's Landing in chains. Some said he should die as Joffrey had, by the sword. Others said the axe was too swift for a man who had orchestrated slaughter from the shadows all his life. Stannis said nothing at first, merely shut himself away with Davos, Melisandre, and his war council. In the end, he chose a middle path that satisfied few. "Tywin Lannister will not die yet," he declared in the throne room. "He will live to stand trial before the lords of this realm, to answer for the murders and betrayals he has sown. If he is found guilty, he will die as the law provides." Murmurs rippled through the hall. Some were shocked he would allow the man to live at all. Others were astonished he would not seize the chance to dispatch such a rival swiftly. Melisandre's eyes narrowed, but she did not speak against him. Later, in private, she did. "You are too merciful," she said. "He is a darkness in this realm, your grace. Cut it out now before it festers." "He is a lord of one of the great houses," Stannis replied. "If I kill him without trial, half the realm will call it murder and no few will take arms for his sake. Let them see him judged. Let them hear his crimes spoken aloud. Then I will kill him." "By fire," Melisandre said. Stannis hesitated. "By law," he said. "Law is fire," she answered softly. "It burns away the fat and leaves the bone." So the realm waited and watched, and the fire did not sleep. The first public burnings took place a month after Stannis' victory. They were small at first. A hedge knight who had raped a girl during the sack, a Old Cloak who had slit his captain's throat and tried to flee, 2 men who had set a rival's shop ablaze to loot it. In another reign they might have swung or lost a hand. Under Stannis, under Melisandre's watchful eye, they burned. It was done in the square before the Great September. A stake driven into the cobbles. Dry wood piled high, the condemned bound. Melisandre standing before them, speaking words in her strange tongue. The king watching from a raised platform, expression grim. "Let the realm see," Stannis said. "Let them remember. Fire is a hard death. That is why we reserve it for the worst." He might have meant it as a deterrent. The sight was certainly enough to haunt any who watched. The smell of burning flesh carried far. People spoke of it in hushed, appalled tones for days. But something else happened too. A creeping fascination took root. Some watched the flames and saw only horror. Others saw power. The way the fire roared up as Melisandre's words poured out. The way the condemned screams seemed to tangle with the crackle and snap of wood and flesh. The way the air itself shimmered with heat. They began to whisper that those who burned were not only punished, but offered to something larger. That their deaths fed a god who, however terrible, answered. The Septons protested. Stannis allowed them to rail against cruelty and to speak of the Seven's mercy. He did not let them call him an enemy of the gods. Those who did found themselves in cells beside Cersei. The more he balanced between faiths, the more he found himself leaning, without intending it, toward one. The city's first Red Temple sprang up almost overnight. It was no grand structure, not at first. An old warehouse in the dockside district, its broken windows mended, its walls hung with crimson cloth. A crude altar in the center, built of scavenged stone. A brazier that burned day and night, fueled by offerings of wood and oil and the rare, precious pinch of spices from across the sea. Melisandre did not minister there. She remained at the king's side, a constant red shadow in his solar and in the council chamber. But she had sent for others of her order. Priests and priestesses from Lys and Volantis and beyond answered the call, drawn by word that a great king of the West had embraced their god. They preached in the streets in thick accented common, their hair bound in scarlet, their hands scarred from the heat of their own braziers. They spoke of light and shadow, of the great war to come, of a darkness that would swallow the world if not held back by fire. "The Lord of Light has chosen your king," they cried. "He turned your enemies' fire against them. He broke their chain. He burned their false king. He will burn the darkness. Follow him, and you will stand in the light when the night falls." Some listened because they were afraid, others because they were hungry and the red priests gave out bread to those who gathered, others because the Septs had nothing left to offer but words from statues that did not move. In the north, word of all this came slowly. Ravens flew from King's Landing and Highgarden and Riverrun and Pike and beyond, each bearing black marks on white wings. They crossed battlefields and burned villages, the scattered remnants of Robb Stark's campaign and the Ironborn forays and the lingering chaos of war. One came to Riverrun, where the young wolf sat in council with his uncle Brynden and the Tully lords, his once great host thinned by battles and deserters and the slow grind of time. "He has taken the city," Robb said, reading Stannis' sealed letter aloud. His voice was harder than it had been when he first set out from Winterfell. "He has executed Joffrey and taken Cersei and Tywin prisoner. He calls upon us to lay down our crown and return to our oaths as subjects of the Iron Throne, in exchange for pardon for those misled by Lannister treachery. He offers me the North as it was under my father's care, and the title of Warden." He laid the letter down, jaw flexing. "He offers your father's seat back to you in exchange for your crown," the Blackfish said. "A shrewd bargain. We would be fools not to take it seriously." "He burned the god's wood at Dragonstone," Lady Meage Mormont growled. "He follows that red witch from Ass High. He burns men alive in the square. Is that the king you would bend the knee to? Better him than a Lannister whelp, others muttered. Robb's eyes were distant, his fingers resting on Grey Wind's head. The big direwolf lay at his feet, hackles faintly raised, nostrils flaring as if he scented someone not in the room. "My father died for this throne," Robb said softly. "He came south for a friend's sake and lost his head to that friend's wife and her bastard. Stannis says he will give me back what my father had. But my father had no justice for his sister, for Lyanna. He had no justice for the killing of his children's wolves. He had no justice for his own death." He looked up. "If I yield, if I lay down the crown, will that bring back Winterfell? Will it drive the Ironborn from my home? Will it fill the empty places at my table where my bannermen's sons once sat?" No one answered. The room was thick with ghosts. Brynden Tully cleared his throat. "He has taken the Lannisters to task where we could not," he said. "There is value in that. The realm cannot stomach war forever. Every day we ride and kill, our own small folk suffer. At some point we must choose which wrongs we will live with and which we will forgive." "Stannis forgives nothing," Robb said. "That is his strength. And his weakness." He rose abruptly. Grey Wind followed, nails clicking on the stone. "I will think on it," Robb said. "I will not answer in haste. The North is not a cloak I can shrug off or don on another's command. It is in the bone. Stannis knows little of that." Later, alone in his chamber with only Grey Wind and his maps for company, he read Stannis's letter again. The words were precise, formal, with little flourish. "I offer you pardon," it said, "not as charity but as king. Your father's name will be cleared. Your sister in my care will be restored to you when peace is secure. Your brother Bran and your brother Rickon, if found, will receive their due. In return, you will return to me the allegiance that House Stark has held to the crown since Aegon's conquest. You will bring me Freys and Boltons and any others whose treachery has stained the memory of this war." He thought of Frey treachery not yet realized, of Roose Bolton's guarded eyes, of things that might be avoided if he chose another path now. He thought of Sansa, trapped in that city he had tried so hard to reach and failed. He thought of stories old men used to tell, of cold things in the woods beyond the wall, of blue eyes and dead hands. He thought of fire. In King's Landing, in a chamber that had once been used for private audiences with foreign envoys and now smelled perpetually of smoke and hot iron. Melisandre watched the flames and smiled. She saw shapes there, a man with a wolf's head and crown of ice. A city burning not from wildfire but from dragon's breath. Ships with black sails on a green sea. A wall of ice cracking under the weight of cold shadows. A sword of living light held in a hand that bled. Behind her, Stannis entered quietly. "What do you see?" he asked, not for the first time. "What always is there," she replied. "War, death, fire, shadows, your fate. Specifically," he said, impatience clipped. She cocked her head, eyes reflecting the blaze. "I see your enemies abroad," she said. "The dragon girl over the narrow sea, with her hatchlings new-grown. The Ironborn, flailing at the coasts like drunken kraken. The North, cold and stubborn. The Tyrells, licking their wounds in Highgarden, speaking of gardens and harvests and dreaming of vengeance. All these you must face in time." She lifted a hand, fingers spreading as if to grasp the flames. "But beneath it all, I see what I have always seen. A great darkness creeping, men with blue eyes and no breath, a cold that eats men's souls and makes them tools. That is the true war. These other games are practice for yours." Stannis's mouth tightened. "You would have me march north now, leave the south to squabble. I would have you prepare," she said. "Bend the realm to your will, unite it under fire, tear down their false shrines and raise altars where the Lord of Light may look upon his people. The colder night grows, the brighter his beacons must burn." "More burnings," he said. "Offerings," she corrected. "You have begun with the worst of your criminals. That is well, but more is needed. The old blood is strong in some. Their deaths would sing loud in the night." He knew what she meant. Edric Storm, Robert's young bastard, whom Stannis had brought to King's Landing as both hostage and possible heir. The boy had his father's eyes and his father's laugh, and a temper that was all his own. Stannis had already begun to call him Prince in private, dreaming of placing him on the throne if something happened to Stannis. "You will not touch the boy," Stannis said. "I told you at Dragonstone, and I tell you now. He is under my protection." "He is your key," Melisandre said. "King's blood, strong and bright. His sacrifice would wake great power. With it, we could sweep your foes away like straw, clear your path to the wall, burn back the darkness when it comes." "No," Stannis said. The word was iron. They stared at one another, the king and the Red Priestess, the air between them shimmering with heat. "You have gone far in my name," Melisandre said at last. "You have burned false gods and false kings. You have made offerings to the fire. You have taken the throne your lord promised you. Do not falter now, when so much is at stake." "I will not trade a child's life for my crown," Stannis replied. "Not while any other path remains. Even if that child's life could save 1,000 others? 10,000? The whole realm?" Her voice was soft, coaxing, the brazier's light painting her face in strange angles. "Even then," he said. Davos, listening from the doorway where he had paused unseen, let out a breath he had not known he held. But Melisandre's eyes narrowed, and in the flames, for a moment, the shapes danced wilder. "You are a hard man," she said, "yet your hardness has cracks. I will fill them with fire when the time comes." When she left, Davos stepped fully into the room. His boots rang on the stone. "She will not forget that refusal, your grace," he said. "Let her remember," Stannis said. "I remember much." He moved closer to the fire, as if drawn despite himself. "You spoke truth," he added after a moment. "About justice. I have tried to give it. I have punished Lannister men and my own alike. I have opened the granaries. I have sent men to rebuild the burned districts. Yet everywhere I look, I see only more that needs doing. More rot, more shadows." "That is kingship," Davos said. "There is always more." "I had thought it would be simpler," Stannis muttered. "Law is written in black and white, yet when I try to apply it to men, it runs red and gray. I hate gray. Gray is where men live," Davos said quietly. Stannis gave him a sharp look. "You brought me smuggled onions, not wisdom, Davos." "You ate the onions, though," Davos replied. "You might find some use in the rest as well." To his surprise, Stannis's mouth twitched. A ghost of something that might almost have been a smile flickered and was gone. "You are impertinent," the king said. "I am lowborn, your grace," Davos said. "We do not always know when to keep our thoughts to ourselves. You know we LL enough when you think I need them," Stannis replied. "Stay, I have letters to answer. One of them is from Robb Stark." Davos's brows rose. "And what does the young wolf say?" "He says he will consider my offer," Stannis said. "He says he will bend the knee if I swear to aid him in driving the Ironborn from his lands and punish those of his own banner who have turned cloaks." He snorted softly. "He demands a great deal for a rebel." "He offers much," Davos said. "The North as ally instead of enemy, the Riverlands at peace, one less front in your war. And you have always said the Ironborn should have been put down hard after the Greyjoy Rebellion. This is your chance to finish that business." Stannis's gaze went back to the flames. "If I help him," he said slowly, "if I take my army north to drive out the Ironborn, the south will be left to fester. The Tyrells will scheme. The Dornish will sulk. The Vale will sit on its mountain and plot. The dragon girl across the sea will hatch her own troubles. I will be fighting on 2 fronts before long. You will be fighting on 10 fronts if you try to hold all this alone," Davos said. "You cannot rule a realm that large by fire and fear only. You will break yourself as surely as any sword." "So you would have me become what?" Stannis asked. "Robert? A man who drinks and laughs and lets others govern in his place? Joffrey? A boy who uses power like a toy and loses it like one? I am what I am, Davos. I cannot be other. Then be the best of what you are, Davos said. Be hard, but not blind. Bend. When bending means you do not break. Stannis' mouth thinned. He looked at the letter again. Very well, he said at last. I will grant the boy his terms. I will help him take back his home. In return, he will kneel. We will bring the North back into the realm not with swords at their throats, but with their old oaths honored. Perhaps that will hold better when the snows come. Davos nodded, relief loosening something in his chest. You will win the loyalty of men like that better with deeds than with flames, he said. Flames have their place, Stannis said. Fear has its uses, but a king who rules only by fear will find his realm without love when he needs it most. He glanced at the fire again, as if half expecting it to leap in rebuttal. Melisandre watched from some unseen place and smiled, for a compromise was still movement, and movement could be turned. The realm shifted and bent and tried to find new balance under the weight of Stannis' justice and the heat of her god. The bend toward fire began in earnest when the first miracles were whispered. A dockworker crushed under a fallen beam, whose bones mended in a week after a red priest laid hands on him and spoke strange words. A child burning with fever, cooled by a draught from a crimson glass vial. A man taken by terror of the burned districts, soot-streaked and wild-eyed, soothed only when he sat before the Red Temple's brazier and heard Melisandre's priests speak of light eating darkness. The Septons called it trickery. The maesters muttered about herbs and potions and the power of belief. Davos suspected coin and careful theater. But the people did not much care. They cared that something seemed to answer. They began to light candles not only before the statues of the Seven, but before open flames. They muttered quick prayers over their hearths. They pricked their fingers and let a drop of blood fall into the fire when a child was born, when a ship sailed, when a plea went up for safe return from war. At first, it seemed harmless enough. A new habit, one among many in a city that had seen more gods come and go than any one man could recall. Then came the day Stannis ordered the statues in the Great September removed. Not burned, he said, taken down, moved. Let them remain in the Sept's vaults as art, if you must. But the main hall will hold no idols. Your Grace, the High Septon stammered. There was a new one now, chosen carefully from men who had not wept too loudly when Joffrey died. This is unprecedented. The Seven are not my concern, Stannis snapped. My concern is that men have used their names to excuse treason and murder. If your Seven are real, let them dwell in men's hearts, not stone. Take the statues down. The work took 3 days. Ropes were slung, pulleys set. The crystal spheres were removed first. The light they cast seemed to dim the moment they left their high perches. Then the great figures were laboriously lowered and hauled away, leaving empty niches in the walls, 7 gaping spaces like missing teeth. On the 3rd day, as the statue of the mother was being shifted, the rope snapped. The massive stone figure crashed to the floor. The sound was like a mountain groaning. Dust exploded. Men screamed and scrambled. When it cleared, the mother lay broken, her face sheared off, her hands shattered. The small folk saw it as omen. Some said it meant the Seven had abandoned them. Others said it meant they were angry. Melisandre said nothing at all, but the smile in her eyes grew. In the hollow left behind, she had an altar built. No great blaze, not at first. Just a raised stone platform, a brazier set upon it. Oil poured, a small flame lit. It burned steadily, never allowed to go out. The sept remained the sept, songs and prayers and incense, the shaven-headed brothers going about their rituals. But the heart of it now held fire. Compromise, Stannis said when Davos spoke to him of it. They keep their September. She keeps her altar. The people may choose wherein to kneel. They will see that the altar stands where their gods once stood, Davos said. It will feel like conquest, not compromise. Perhaps conquest is what is needed, Stannis replied. Their old ways brought us a mad king and a false one. Perhaps a new way will bring something. Better. Or something worse, Davos muttered. Choice between bad and worse is all a king ever has, Stannis said. You should know that by now. By the time the first snows dusted the Kingswood that winter, men in the Crownlands had begun to joke darkly that there were two kings in the city, Stannis of Steel and Melisandre of Fire. The joke soured when the first noble house burned. House Stokeworth had never been mighty. Their holdfast was modest, their lands limited. They were small lords who had bent whichever way the wind blew. Under Joffrey, they had worn lion colors and sent sons to serve in the gold cloaks. Under Stannis, they had knelt quickly. Too quickly, some said, when a plot was uncovered to smuggle Cersei's youngest out of the city. Tommen, still a prisoner in the Red Keep, still the subject of whispered Lannister hopes. The trail of coin and promises led, inexorably, to Stokeworth. Lady Tanda claimed ignorance. Her daughter Lollies wept and protested that she knew nothing of any scheme. Ser Balman Byrch, the knight who had married into the family, swore the accusations were false. Stannis convened a small council of lords to hear the evidence. Ravens with codes and seals, bribed guards confessing under question, letters in a hand that matched the lady's stewards. If I do nothing, Stannis said, other lords will think they may play such games and earn a slap on the wrist. If I hang a few men and spare the house, they will think their names shield them. If I put the house to the sword and take their lands, they will say I am as mad as Ares. Then do not put them to the sword, Davos said. Take their lands, send them to the wall, make their line end, but do not burn them. Melisandre was already smiling. Burning would make an example, she said. They raised their hands against your rightful rule. They sought to restore the darkness. The flame will take their sin and make it light. You speak of this sin as if it were wood for your fire, Davos snapped. It is, she said. Stannis's jaw clenched. He stared at the fire in the brazier, watching it jump and dance, as if he could read some verdict there. Ser Davos, he said at last, you will carry my terms to Lady Tanda. She and those of her house who knew of this plot will stand judgment. If she confesses and names all accomplices, I will spare her family the flame. They will be stripped of lands and titles, sent to the wall or to some lesser hold far from court. If she refuses, if she lies, I will burn her and any who shield her. The realm must see that I do not suffer treachery. And if she lies and confesses? Davos asked. Stannis's mouth twitched. Then she will learn that lying to me twice is worse than once. Go, speak to her. Tell her I am not without some mercy for those who help me clean this muck. Davos went. Lady Tanda was not a brave woman. She wept and pleaded and wrung her hands. In the end, faced with the choice between her pride and the pyre, she broke. She named her steward, her septon, her cousin who had a son among the gold cloaks. She named Ser Balman. She protested that she had only thought to save a sweet boy from a cruel king, that she had not meant to undo the realm. Davos believed some of that. Stannis believed none. He hanged the steward and the cousin and the septon. He sent Ser Balman to the wall. He took Stokeworth's lands into the crown, and he burned Lady Tanda. The pyre was built outside the city walls, on a hill where the smoke could be seen for miles. The small folk gathered in grim silence. Some said they came to jeer a woman who had betrayed their new king. Others said they came to see if he would truly do it. Melisandre lit the fire herself. The wind carried her chanting down to those below. The flames climbed high. Lady Tanda screamed at first, then not at all. Davos could not watch. He stood with his back to the pyre, jaw clenched, listening to the crackle and the murmurs of the crowd. When it was done, when only charred beams and ashes and a blackened shape remained, Melisandre came to stand beside him. You disapprove, she said. I remember watching men burn on the Blackwater, he replied. That was battle. This is different. You approve of killing when it is tidier? She asked. I approve of swiftness, Davos said. Not cruelty. Cruelty? She tilted her head. If she had lived, Her house's name would have stood as stain and temptation. Others would have thought, she conspired with the Lannisters and buys only exile. Perhaps we too might risk such. Now they will think differently. Do you call that cruelty, if it saves more lives in the end? He had no answer that would satisfy her, or himself. In the weeks that followed, the realm began to bend. Some bent from conviction, kneeling before the red altars, murmuring prayers in halting Valyrian, letting the priests mark their foreheads with ash in the shape of a flame. Others bent from fear, lighting candles before both sept and brazier, hedging their bets. Some bent because there was grain to be had at the Red Temples and work on the king's rebuilding projects if one wore the right badge. In the north, Robb Stark rode home to a burned Winterfell, flanked by Stannis' banners and his own. The sight broke something in him. The smoking ruins, the blackened stones, the heads on the walls. No one had bothered to take them down, skins sloughing, eyes pecked out by crows. The godswood, though, yet stood, its great weirwood white as bone, its red leaves like a wound against the snow. There were no red priests here, no altars of fire, only a pool that reflected the sky and the carved face that watched without judgment. Stannis' men muttered at the cold, at the strange silence of the northern folk. Melisandre stood under the weirwood and stared up at its face for a low. In time, the old gods sleep lightly here, she said to Davos. Their roots go deep. This land will not take to my lord easily. Perhaps it need not, Davos replied. The king swore not to touch their godswood. For now, she said. Stannis rode into the great hall, its roof half collapsed, and sat in the stone seat of House Stark beside the hearth. You have my thanks, Robb said, swallowing bitter pride. Without your men, I would have bled out a dozen more fights with the Ironborn, and still they would have slipped from my grasp. Now they are broken, their king dead on a rope in his own hall. For that, I am in your debt. You repaid some part of that debt at the Dreadfort, Stannis said. The Boltons have paid for their treachery with blood. The flayed men on their banners burned well enough. His mouth flexed. Your choice to bring Roose to me rather than kill him on the field shows you understand justice better than some. I wanted my men to see him answer for what he did, Robb said. Not vanish into snow with steel in his back. It matters that they heard the truth, that they saw his end. You think like a king, Stannis said. It is a pity you cannot be one. Robb's jaw clenched. We had that talk, he said. He had bent the knee in the godswood, the damp earth soaking through his breeches, the cold seeping into his bones. He had felt something watching, old and indifferent. Your crown was small beside the weight of what is coming, Stannis said. You chose well. See that your lords remember that when I call for their levies in winters yet to come. Together, they set about putting the north in order, taking back Moat Cailin from the Ironborn stragglers who had holed up there, restoring Carhold to a lesser Karstark cousin after the Lord's treason, sending letters to the mountain clans with promises that their old oaths would be honored if they answered the call. In King's Landing, Sansa lived in a small stone chamber with a window that looked out over the city. The lion heads that had adorned the bedposts were gone, replaced by a plainness that might have been intended to comfort or erase. Her maid now was a quiet woman from the marchlands who knew little of court intrigue and much of laundry. She attended few feasts. There were few feasts to attend. Stannis did not care for them. When he held court, it was to settle disputes and hear petitions, not to see and be seen. Once he called her forward. You are the daughter of a hand and the niece of a king, he said, looking down at her from the Iron Throne. He sat it rarely, disliking its discomfort, but he understood the value of appearances. Your father died because he spoke truth. That is admirable, if foolish. I do not think he was foolish, Sansa said before she could stop herself. Her voice shook. No, Stannis said after a moment. Perhaps not. He misjudged the woman he served. That is a different failing. He looked at her steadily. Your brother has bent the knee, he said. He has accepted my terms. The North returns to the realm. In recognition of your father's service and your brother's choice, I offer you a place in my court as lady-in-waiting to my queen, or the chance to return to Winterfell when your brother's bannermen deem it safe. Celis Florent as queen was a bleak prospect. Celis with her pinched mouth and her eager faith, her talk of sin and purity. Yet home. I would like to go north, Sansa said, her throat tight. If it please your grace. It will please me more if you do not bring southern foolishness to a northern seat, Stannis said. The court will not have the North's heart quickly. It is a hard land. It needs hard rulers. She thought of Robb and wondered what kind of king he might have been, given time. One thing first, Stannis said. When you leave the city, you will leave as a ward of House Baratheon, not a runaway from House Lannister. I will have you stand in the square when I pronounce judgment on Cersei, that the realm may see that you are not one of her brood. The trial of Cersei Lannister was held in the Great September, now half-red temple, half-hollow shrine, its alcoves empty of statues. She stood in chains before the gathered lords and small folk, her golden hair shorn to her shoulders, her once beautiful face drawn and pale. Tommen sat beside her, unchained but stiff, a boy caught between mothers and kings. Tywin, thinner now, his hair gone to iron, watched from a separate place, also chained. His eyes missed nothing. The charges were many. Adultery with her brother, incest, the murder of the king, the false accusing and execution of a hand, the enabling of her son's cruelties, treason against the rightful heir. Witnesses came. Some spoke willingly, eager to distance themselves from a sinking lion. Others spoke because they valued their lives more than their silence. Jaime Lannister did not come. He had vanished somewhere between Riverrun and the capital, and no raven had found him. Sansa spoke, too. Her voice shook as she spoke of her father's last days, of Cersei's smiles and soft words and the cold order that had sent him to the block. I begged for mercy, Sansa said. The queen told me that my father would live if I wrote what she wished. I did as she asked, but he died anyway. Cersei's lips tightened. For a moment something like regret flickered in her eyes, then hardened into resentment. I did what I had to do to protect my children, she said. Any mother would. You protected your father's pride, Stannis said from the judge's seat. You protected your power. Your children suffered for it. He glanced briefly at Tommen. When the tale was told and the evidences weighed, Stannis stood. In the name of Robert, he said, and by the law of this realm I find you guilty. Your children by your brother are tainted. One is dead by my SW. Ord. One is in my care. The girl will be sent where she cannot be used to further your plots. The boy will be given a choice when he comes of age. The Wall, a quiet life under another name, or the Fire. You, Cersei Lannister, will die for your crimes. The Sept buzzed like a hive. Some had expected banishment, a fall from grace and power. Death was more. Melisandre stepped forward, ruby blazing. Burn her, she said. The words seemed to lick along the stone. No, Stannis said. Melisandre's head snapped toward him. He looked out over the crowd, over the lords and commoners alike, at the Sept's ruined niches. Aerys made the mistake of burning his enemies in this very place, Stannis said. He thought it made him strong. It made him mad. The realm remembers. I will not be him. He looked back at Cersei. You will die by the sword, he said. Here, before those you wronged. The fire will not take you. The fire is for offerings, not mercy, Melisandre hissed. You call this mercy? She has poisoned more souls than any wildfire. It is justice, Stannis said. Her blood spilled here will be remembered. That is enough. Cersei laughed once, a broken sound. You deny me the fire out of spite, she said. You know your red bitch wants me, and you will not give her the satisfaction. Perhaps, Stannis said. Guard, take her. The sword that killed Cersei was the same that had killed her son. The blow was not botched. Her head rolled, golden hair trailing, blood fanning out across the Sept floor. Tommen screamed and had to be held back. In the days after, Whispers rose that the king had defied the Red Woman. Some said the Lord of Light would turn his face from him now. Others said the king had proven that he ruled the fire, not the other way around. Melisandre's eyes burned hotter than ever. "You thwarted your own victory," she said to him in the quiet of his solar. Her life had weight. Her blood would have sung loud. "You spill it like water on stone and think you have done justice, while the darkness swells." "I will not be a butcher," Stannis said. "Not for you, not for any god." "Yet you burn others," she said. "You make offerings when it suits you." "I burn those the law demands and the realm understands," he said. "Treason, murder, rape, I do not burn for whim. That path leads to madness." Melisandre smiled thinly. "Kings do not go mad," she said. "They become what they were meant to be." "You speak of meant too much," he replied. "I make my own choices, as I will when the snows fall." He moved to the window looking north. "And they will fall soon," he said softly. "The wind has turned." "You were right about that, at least." She joined him. "The wall waits," she said. "The true enemy waits. You have bent the realm as much as you may by law and steel. It is time to bend it by fire. Take your armies. Raise your banners of the burning heart. March. Burn away the cold when it comes." Stannis watched the city below, the tangled streets, the Red Temple's new tower, the thin lines of smoke from 100,000 hearths where people prayed to gods old and new. "I will march," he said. "I will take the fight to the wall. But I will not leave this realm a pyre behind me. When I return, if I return, I will need something left worth ruling." "The fire will keep," she murmured. "It always does." When he rode out of King's Landing at last, snow flurries spinning in the air, though it was not yet deep winter, his banner flew alongside that of the crowned stag wrapped in a heart of flame. Behind him came knights of the Stormlands, lords of the Crownlands, men from the Reach who had bent to him rather than face his justice, levies from the Riverlands whose fields needed peace. Davos rode at his side. His fingers were stiff with cold. He thought of his sons lost at Blackwater, of the men burned in Square and Sept, of the small mercies and the hard choices, of a realm that had been forced, inch by inch, toward a new kind of faith. "You have bent them," he said quietly to Stannis as the city receded behind them. "Not broken, bent. It may be enough." "It will have to be," Stannis said. "The night will not care what gods we prayed to, only what we did." He did not look back. On the hill above the road, under a bare-limbed tree, Melisandre watched them go, the fire in her brazier burning steady despite the wind. In the great September-turned temple, Sansa Stark knelt one last time before both altar and brazier, a quick prayer to a god she did not quite understand, and a quieter one to the old gods she had not seen since Winterfell. Then she rose and went down to the river, where a ship waited to carry her north. In the Red Keep, Tyrion Lannister, face scarred and half-healed, lay in a small cell, listening to the distant hoofbeats and thinking of chains that broke and those that did not. And in the far, far north, beyond the wall, something old and cold stirred, sensing, perhaps dimly, the flare of 100 new fires in the land it meant to claim. The realm had been bent by fire. Whether it would hold that shape when the true winter came remained to be seen.